All right, let's dive right into a classic debate, a real battle of wits, chess versus poker. They're both seen as these ultimate tests of intelligence, but when you get down to it, they couldn't be more different.
I mean, this is a question that's been argued in clubs, forums, and probably a few late-night dorm room sessions for decades, right? Where do the smartest people really hang out? Is it hunched over a chessboard, or is it staring someone down across a poker table? Well, today, we're going to break it all down.
Okay, so before we can even think about declaring a winner, we've got to get on the same page. What even is a high IQ game? Because we're not just talking about your average board game night here. These games, they demand a very specific set of intellectual muscles.
So what are those core traits? Well, we're looking for stuff like deep strategy and planning, recognizing patterns on the fly, calculating risk versus reward in a heartbeat, and maybe most importantly, being able to adapt to a real thinking opponent. This is basically our scorecard for this whole showdown.
All right, our criteria is set. Let's introduce the heavyweight stepping into the intellectual ring.
So, in one corner, you've got chess, the absolute icon of pure, cold strategy. In the other corner, poker, the master of incomplete information and reading people. And, you know what? We've got to give a shout out to the modern challenger, esports, which is a whole different beast of speed and teamwork.
First up, let's talk about the classic champion, the game that's been the symbol of pure genius for centuries, chess.
So, what does it take to be a chess grandmaster? Well, you've got to have this incredible ability for deep calculation. We're talking thinking dozens of moves ahead. You need a killer memory to recall all those classic openings and patterns. And on top of all that, you need serious strategic foresight, the ability to just look at the board and see the path to victory.
And the data really backs this up. Study after study shows that the average IQ of a competitive chess player is over 120. That's a really clear link to what we think of as traditional intelligence. Chess is all about raw intellectual horsepower.
But here's the thing, that's not the whole story. Not even close. Because what if intelligence isn't just about pure calculation? What if it's also about adapting to what you don't know? Well, for that we have to look at a completely different game. And that brings us to our real-world challenger. Let's talk about poker, the game that's all about the uncertainty and, let's be honest, the messy psychology of real life.
See, poker demands this totally different, but just as powerful set of skills. You're constantly calculating odds and probabilities, but you never have all the information. You have to basically be a psychologist, trying to read your opponents for any tiny tell or bluff. And, of course, you have to manage risk under huge pressure. You got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them.
So it's really no surprise when you hear that the best poker players often come from fields like math, finance, or even programming. For them, it's not gambling. It's like a complex system of logic and human behavior that's just waiting to be cracked.
So, this brings us right back to our big question. On one hand, you've got this battle of perfect information and logic. On the other, a battle against messy, unpredictable human beings. Which one is the tougher mental workout?
Okay, it's time for the final verdict. Let's put these two giants head-to-head and see how they really stack up.
And this is where the biggest difference really just snaps into focus. Chess, it's a closed system. It's a battle of pure logic, where you can see everything on the board. Perfect information. But poker, that's an open system. It's a battle against what you can't see, where logic gets all tangled up with human psychology and just unpredictability. So, the big question, which one is harder? Honestly, it just depends on what you're measuring. If we're talking about pure brute force calculation, yeah, chess is the tougher challenge, hands down. But if we're talking about dealing with psychology, adapting to chaos, and handling unpredictable people, poker definitely takes the crown there. It's just a fundamentally different kind of intelligence.
And this leads to a really powerful argument you hear from a lot of psychologists. They say, look, the real world, it rarely ever looks like a chessboard. Life is messy. It's full of incomplete information and unpredictable people. And that's why poker's mix of math, risk, and reading people is often seen as a much truer test of real-world smarts.
So in the end, there isn't one single winner here. Chess is the undisputed champion of pure, classic strategic thinking. Poker is the champion of that messy, real-world intelligence. And hey, let's not forget esports, which is forging its own path by testing speed, adaptation, and teamwork. Really, each game just crowns a different kind of intelligent player.
So it really all comes down to this one question.
Where do you think intelligence is truly tested? Is it in a perfect puzzle with every single piece laid out on the board for you to see? Or is it in a messy, incomplete game where you have to read your opponent to figure out what's hidden? The game you pick, well, it might just say as much about you as it does about your IQ.
Visit bluffingmonkeys.com and start a live chat to join a poker club now.
bluffingmonkeys.com